Hello, and thanks for tuning back into Chicanic. Hope everybody's having a great week. It is a hot one here in Arkansas. If you want to know what it feels like at our 97 degrees and 100% humidity, all you got to do is take a hot shower, get out, do not dry off, put your clothes on. That's about what it feels like in Arkansas right now. Okay, so let's jump right into it. As I've said in my previous videos, we see over 2,000 pieces of equipment every single year at our shop. My plan with these tutorial videos is to show you the most common problems we see with these pieces of equipment so homeowners can fix them at home by themselves with what they have around the house. Now there's a lot of videos already on this, but I wanted to add this to the collection and hopefully this can help you save time, money, and frustration in the future. One of the biggest problems we see with some of the Briggs Intek engines is the camshaft. Now, there is only a couple times that you're going to want to go inside of your engine to actually fix it if you're a homeowner. That is, if it's a camshaft and you're a little mechanical. I'm not going to say this is an easy job. This is one of the tougher ones, and the governor. Now, if you have any problems with your crankshaft, your rods, your pistons and cylinders, that's something that, is not so easy to do at home. I would even suggest if you do have any issues with your pistons, rods, crankshaft, something like that, the parts are so expensive that a lot of times it's not even worth it. I would just look into getting another engine. So we get a lot of customers that come in and they have the same problem with this engine. They come in telling us that it's laggy to start, that it doesn't matter if it has a brand new battery, a brand new starter, it will just lug to start. Now, a lot of times, especially with this particular engine, it could just be your valves out of adjustment. That is something that nobody thinks about doing, but you do need to have it done every, I'd say, couple of years. Have your valves adjusted because hopefully it'll save from this problem happening quickly. So today we're going to go over how to diagnose and how to replace the camshaft in your Briggs Intek engine. For this demonstration, we will be using the Briggs and Stratton 18.5 Intek engine, 540 cc's. This is also the 33 series, which this also covers the 31 series. In 10 years, there has never been another camshaft that I've had to order. It is always the same exact one that breaks in all of these. So the part number has changed though to an 84005207. And when the part number changed, that means the part has changed and it comes with a little kit of extra pieces. The oil seal that we will be needing, which it says that you do not have to replace unless it is damaged. It is a 795387. The crankcase gasket is a 697110. We will be using our torque wrench. Know how many inch-pounds that we are going to be using. I do have gloves, so don't worry about that. I know everybody's worried about my hands all the time. I am going to be replacing the spark plug. I've got my little socket set here because I will be using, I think, my T20 and also 5/8 for the spark plug, 10 or 3/8 for some of the nuts or bolts, I'm sorry. And then I also have the feeler gauge so we can adjust our valves, and we will be using 0.005 and 0.006. Oops, and I almost forgot my impact with my 1/2 inch socket. So we diagnosed this already at work today. That's why I brought it home so I can show you how to fix it. And I know that the camshaft is bad, but I'm going to show you how to figure it out all by yourself if yours is also bad. So the first thing you're going to want to do, you're going to want to remove your overhead valve cover. This takes a 3/8. Also, I've had a lot of people ask me about what tools I use. Some girls want diamonds and, their hair done. I like Wera tools. Once you have your overhead valve cover off, you can see your rocker arms, your exhaust valve, your intake valve, and the first thing that we're going to want to do is go through the compression stroke and bring it back up so we can get to top dead center and check our valve lash. So we're going to turn the engine until we see the intake valve go down, and as it comes back up, it's going to hit top dead center. Now you can take a screwdriver and you can stick it into your spark plug hole and also feel it that way to make sure that it's right there at the top, which means it's at top dead center. Once we're here, we're going to get out our feeler gauge, and it needs to be 5 to 7 thousandths. So I'm going to check it here, and you can feel the resistance. It looks good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go through the compression stroke again, and we're going to be watching this intake valve as it comes back up to top dead center. Right before it does, it'll do a little kind of bounce that'll show us that it's working correctly. If it doesn't do this bounce, then you know you have a camshaft problem. So we're going to turn the engine. It's going through its exhaust stroke. Now here's the intake. It's going down. Comes back up, and there is absolutely no bounce to that whatsoever. So this confirms to us that it definitely needs a camshaft. Now, I ain't gonna lie, this is not one of the easiest fixes to do. In a scale of 1 to 10, this is an 8 or 9 on, you know, how to fix your internal parts of your engine here. So it's not something that a homeowner can do all the time, but if you do follow these steps, you will be successful. The first thing that we're going to have to do is take out our push rods, and to do this you're going to have to loosen up the set screws on the nuts holding your rocker arms. Once we're like that, we can get out our rods. One thing you are going to want to take off, just so you don't get them lost, is these tappets on top of your valves, and just put them in your overhead valve cover, save them for later. Okay, so we've turned the engine over now so we can get to the sump. The first thing that we're going to want to do is remove the cover on the oil pump drive shaft. This is going to take a 8mm or a 5/16. So I've got my 8mm. Now, I think I've said it before, but we've already removed all the oil out of this engine. Now we can remove the oil pump drive shaft. Now, I forgot to bring a magnet home, which if you have one, that is what is preferable, because I'm just trying to pry it up here and it'll just come right off. Now you have the shaft inside. There it is. Got that out. Next thing we're going to do is take the bolts that are holding the sump onto the engine. I am using my 1/2" impact. Now, they are very heavily thread locked, so you can try to take them out by hand, but it is going to be a task for sure. Alright, so once you get your bolts out, I ain't gonna lie, it's gonna be stuck like Chuck. You're going to want to get a rubber mallet. Do not use a metal hammer. You will break your sump. And there's 2 places on this sump that you can tap it lightly, or you know, as much as you need to actually get it to come and release. There's one on the front here, and there's also a little lip here on the back. Do not hit your oil drain or your oil filter. Just these 2 lips right here. So we're going to go ahead and try to tap that off. All right, now we've got it loose. Now we're to the camshaft and the governor and all the inside guts. All right, so I had to zoom in here for you so you don't miss this. As I took the sump pump off, you can see automatically what is wrong with this. This little piece that's just hanging out here, that is your decompression trigger. It has broken off of the camshaft. So let's go over what the decompression trigger actually does. Okay, so I have a brand new camshaft right here, and I get Briggs and Stratton OEM. Why? Ask me how. I know that the aftermarkets don't work because we've tried it. And in fact, Briggs and Stratton is actually out of camshafts right now. So hopefully by the time you watch this video and you need to replace your camshaft, everything's back in order and they've got them in stock again, because you do not want to use an aftermarket. There is nothing worse than doing all this work, all this labor, putting it together, and it breaking the first time you try to run it. Believe me, I know. So this is how it works. As you go through your compression stroke, it's going to go over the lobe. The lifter is going to go over the lobe, and it's going to hit this little pin that's right here on your decompression trigger. And when it does that, like I was looking for earlier, you see that bounce in the valve. And so it will give that little extra, decompression to help start your engine. But once your engine is started, the centrifugal force will open this and the pin is flush on one side, so it'll never hit it again. So you got full compression while the engine's running, and it stays open like that. So what we find is these break off over time. All right, so let's dig into this. The first thing you're going to do is remove your governor. Now, when you take it off, it just comes straight up, right? But you're going to want to hold this stuff together and put the pin straight up towards the sky, because you don't want all this falling apart on you, because that's not fun either. Next thing we're going to do is take our camshaft out. To do that, you're just going to pull it right out, just like that. You can see it's broken, the decompression trigger's gone, and we're going to replace it. Okay, so before we put the new camshaft in, we have to do the worst part of this fix, and that is scrape all of this old gasket off. Now, Briggs and Stratton, they recommend you use a plastic scraper to get all of this off. So I'm going to tell you, get your plastic scraper and do it. I, on the other hand, am not going to be using a plastic scraper to do this today. We've used other methods, the last 30 that we've done this year, and it works just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape this, and when I come back, it's going to be all clean and pretty again. All right, so if we look down inside of the engine, the camshaft was sitting in this hole right here. Next to it is the two lifters, and the reason the part number changed for this camshaft is because it comes with now new lifters. So we're going to just pull these ones out and put some new ones in, and they just pull right out. Let me get down there with my other hand. Pull that one out, and we're going to put our new ones in. Just like that. Okay, so before we put the camshaft in, there's actually some timing marks. Here's one on the camshaft, and then there's another one on the crankshaft gear right here, and we're going to have to line those up. So I've turned my crankshaft around to where this gear, the timing mark, is going towards my camshaft, and I'm going to make sure that it goes in between right here where this mark is. So I'm going to slide this down in the hole. And let me show you here that the timing marks are lined up together. Okay, so I've spun the engine around so we can get a better view of putting the governor back in. Now it's just going to slide right down, but at the same time that we're doing it, we're going to have to make sure that the gear on the governor goes into the camshaft, and also that this pin here sits perfectly on this little lever. So we're going to hold on to it as we set it down here. We're going to get the gear to fall into the camshaft and make sure that the pin is meeting that lever. Okay, so we're ready to put the sump back on with our gasket, but first thing I'm going to tell you to do, only from experience now, ask me how I know, you have these wires around here, and you're going to want to unclip them, get them as far away from your sump as possible, because you can pinch them, you will go to start your mower up, you'll pop a fuse, and you're doing this all over again. Ask me how I know. All right, so we've got all of our guts back inside. Next thing to do is put our sump back on the engine. We're going to grab our gasket and put it on correctly over its holes. Everything looks good. Now we can grab our sump. You can see that I've got all of the old gasket off of the sump. We're going to lubricate this area where the seal goes so we can get, I'm actually going to just put the old seal, keep the old seal in because it's still good. You can change the seal out if you want to, but Briggs does not recommend that you change it out every time if it's not needed. So I'm going to grab some 30 weight. Oop, a little too much. I'm going to lubricate around here. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to make sure that our governor is still lined up perfectly on that pin, because it's got to be there to get your sump back lined up correctly, which I do have it on my pin. And I'm going to come on down until I get to this point right here. Now it's leaning on this seal. And there's a trick to getting the old seal back in. If you have a very small screwdriver or like a dental pick, we're going to go around the inside of this very carefully without poking the plastic, and we're going to push it in to where we can push it back down. Do not just go and push it back down, because it will flip out this way, and that spring that holds it all together will come apart. So we're just going to work it back down. Let me find my pick here. We're going to go around the inside of this seal, and we're going to push it back down in. I've got just a real small screwdriver here. Do not poke your plastic. Once you have that flap push down in all the way around, we're going to take our mallet and we're going to gently tap it back into place. While we're tapping, we're going to be continuing to check the seal, making sure that it doesn't flip out on you, which ours is doing good right now. And it looks like we've got it all in place. All right, so now that we have our sump in place, we've put our bolts back in with some blue thread lock. We are going to seat the sump with the bolts. This is not torquing it down. It is just getting it to where it will, sit flush with the engine. So we have our 1/2 inch, and we are going to start the same pattern that we're going to torque it down in. We're going to use to just seat the sump pump. So we're going to start out with one over here. And we're just going to go until you can feel it seat, but not to where you're putting any pressure on it at all. Next, we're going to come over to 2. And we're going to continue to do this all the way through here. I am going to be putting up a picture so you can see the actual pattern that you need to torque everything down in. Okay. All right, so we've got all of our bolts in flush, seated in the pan. Next, we're going to be able to torque them in the same pattern that we did before. Now, Briggs and Stratton, they recommend 220 inch-pounds, which it has varied widely over the years, but currently it is 220. So we've got our torque wrench, and we're going to start out with 1 again. And when we do this, to know that you're to the point of it being torqued correctly, we're going to wait. I turned it up on its side because it's easier to do it this way so you can hold the engine in place. But once you go, you're going to wait until you hear the wrench click. You hear that? Okay, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to just make sure. I'm not turning it anymore. All I'm doing is double checking, triple checking it's in its perfect, you know, position. So next we're going to go over to the second one and we're going to do the pattern like I'm going to show you in the picture because I think it'll be easier than just following me here. We've got everything torqued down to its spec, and next we're going to replace the oil pump drive gears. Now when you do buy the new camshaft, the kit that is replaced, it gives you this new little shaft right here that you're going to use. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to put this ring back inside. And then you're going to put your shaft, your new one, doesn't matter which way you stick it in. It just goes down in here. You just have to twist it until it seats down in. And next thing you're going to do is you're going to put this gear on, and you might have to twist it around a little bit to find the perfect position that it goes till it falls down back on that little nib right there. Next, you're going to put your cover on. Now, there is only one way for this cover to go back on. I mean, it looks like you should be able to put the screws in anyway, but if you do it wrong, you will destroy it. So this O-ring is going to sit in the center here, and as you turn it around, you can see the bolt holes line up. Now, where I have it currently, I've got one bolt hole lined up. These two are not. I'm going to twist it again. I have this one lined up. This one almost lined up. Is that correct? No, we're still off on two of them. I'm going to twist one more time. Now we have all three bolt holes lined up. We can put our bolts back in. All right, so next we need to finish up our valve section, put our push rods back in. I do have the engine sitting upright like this because it is much easier to get your rods back in. You have two different rods. One is aluminum and one is steel. The darker one is the steel rod. You could also tell from how much they weigh, the aluminum one is much lighter. Now, the steel rod is the one that goes on the exhaust side. The exhaust, we remember, is the one closest to the top of the engine, the exhaust valve, and the intake valve is the one closest to the sump. So we're going to put the darker steel push rod in the top hole up here. And we're going to put the aluminum one in the bottom. So we're going to turn the engine to make sure, and you can see it coming up. And the intake one comes up. And next thing we're going to do, we'll be able to put our rocker arms back in place. We're going to put our tappets back on our valves. I'm going to bring our rocker arms back up. All right, so once you've got it to this point, we're going to want to, once again, get it to top dead center, but we're going to actually be going 1/4 inch past top dead center to set our valve lash. So we are going to find something to stick down into our plug hole once we get to that point. But first, let me remember we had to turn the engine. We go through the exhaust stroke, then we're going through the intake. It's going to go down. Going to come back up. Once we get there, I'm sticking something down inside and I can feel it come all the way up, but then it's going to come just a smidgen back down here. And then we're able to set our valves. All right, so you're going to get your feeler gauge out. Now, Briggs recommends that these are 5 to 7. We set the intake at 5 and the exhaust at 7. So I have my 5/1000 feeler gauge. I'm going to stick it in here and I'm going to tighten it down just a little bit until I can feel the resistance. But I can still slide it, but it's, you know, you've got a feeling of resistance there. So I'm going to keep it in this position with my 5/8 wrench while I tighten it down with my T20 torque. That's good, just barely. All right, now we're gonna do our other one. I'm gonna set it at 6. I'm gonna go in here, and it's already a little too tight for me just finger tightening it. And I can feel a good amount of tension right there. I'm going to come back, I'm going to hold it in place, and I'm going to tighten it down. Just like that. Now we have our valves lashed. Alright, so now we're going to make sure that it's working. I'm sure it is, but I want to show you as I turn the engine, we're going to go through the exhaust stroke, intake stroke, and as it comes back up, you're going to see it go up, and see that little bounce right there? That is the decompression working. We have successfully fixed this engine. All right, so I'm busting a sweat, but we are done. I'm going to take this engine back up to the shop tomorrow. We're going to put it back on the mower, service it out. We're going to run it for a little bit, and we are going to recheck the valve lash after we've run it, just to make sure, because there is sometimes that it does come out of adjustment, and you do not want to have problems in the future or have to buy another camshaft later. So hopefully this video saved you time, money, and frustration in the future. If you haven't found us on Facebook yet, find us at facebook.com/Chicanic. Thank you so much. Have a great day.